is once again upon us. Earth Day is this Monday. Let's take a look.
It started as a simple idea back in 1970 that grew into one of the biggest celebrations on the planet, Earth Day. This unofficial holiday in most countries is actually recognized by the UN and is often dedicated to all things eco-friendly. But it's not just about enjoying the great outdoors or even stepping up your recycling skills. For many, Earth Day is about activism. Whatever the cause championed or chosen way to go green, one thing about April 22nd is certain. Earth Day is a time when people from around the world can unite to honor the one resource no one can live without.
Before we get the conversation started, we do have some new panelists to introduce, so let's introduce them, shall we? Yohuru, real quickly. You're new to some, but not all. Go ahead.
Yohuru Williams, Fairfield University.
Great. Jose, welcome.
Jose Lopez from Seton Hall University.
Welcome. Always good to see you. And Dee Dee?
Political commentator and former aide of President Bush.
Great, and we do have a new Skype member joining us. We have Scott Faber. He's the Vice President of Government Affairs of the Environmental Working Group. So, Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm just going to throw it out to the panel. Jose, let's start with you. For new viewers not familiar with Earth Day, what is it and when did it start and why do we do it?
Earth Day started April 22nd, 1970, and it was started by Senator Gaylord, I forget his last name. Nelson, Gaylord Nelson, who was from Wisconsin. Thank you. And it was during the era where all these sit-ins were happening, the Vietnam era, when there were all these war protests, and he was inspired by that to get people interested in the environment and about protecting it.
Okay, so what does Earth Day mean? What do we do? How do we celebrate? What are we trying to accomplish? I'll throw that one out to Scott.
You know, Earth Day was originally designed to be a teach-in. It was actually an unorganized, little organic teach-in that was really designed to get people to think more about the chemicals we put in the environment, the chemicals we put in our body. It was a time when we were losing lots of natural resources, when rivers were literally on fire because of the pollutants that were discharged into them. So then it was really about reversing a long history of environmental destruction. Today, Earth Day is more and more about how we change our own lives to try to help pass a healthier planet on to future generations, changing how we eat, the products we buy, the cars we buy, what we ask our legislators to do. It's really an opportunity, but ultimately an opportunity to change what we do in our everyday lives to pass a more sustainable planet on to future generations.
All right, and Yohuru, that said, how do you celebrate and what are you trying to accomplish?
Well, it's interesting for me because when we talk about the history of Earth Day, it actually, the impetus was, and this was a time that was very divided in American history over all kinds of issues, but there was an oil spill in Santa Barbara where 3 million gallons of oil actually were spilled off the coast of California, and you had this bipartisan effort, Republicans, Democrats getting together, Gaylord Nelson, of course, President Nixon, to get people galvanized about the environment. Unfortunately for me, and I like to celebrate just by being more aware of what's going on.
Right.
The impetus that resulted from that in Earth Day, the creation of an Environmental Protection Agency, for example, a lot of that's being reversed. The Environmental Protection Agency, for example, is under assault. So we have Earth Day and it's this big phenomena and people pause for a moment to think about these things, but ultimately, do we have the agencies in place that are going to be able to make real changes to investigate some of these abuses so that we really are talking about a sustainable planet?
What's your take, Dee Dee? Do you think what Yohuru said, the EPA is being assaulted and we're going backwards a little bit?
No, I don't think we're going backwards. In fact, I think we're doing pretty well. And I will say on a personal note, being from Indiana and coming to New York, of course, Indiana is one of those states where no one recycles. And in fact, in the whole country, there's only 3 states where it's illegal. I was amazed at that. It was Nevada, California, and New York. So here, of course, I recycle all the time because they make it easy, it's set up, it's part of the program. And for me, Earth Day means that. It's like doing something in your life that makes you think about it, because in most states, they just don't.
Right. Why isn't it illegal in more states? It seems like a no-brainer to me.
I think it should be.
Probably should be. I mean, what do you think?
I think it should be. We go back to Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. When she wrote that book in 1962, very few people were aware of the environment or thought about the environment in that way. And even in the immediate aftermath of the creation of Earth Day, there were those who complained, Senator Jacob Javits of New York, that this was going to take attention away from issues of poverty, the war in Vietnam, so on and so forth. But again, it was that bipartisan effort that was great. The partisanship today is what bothers me. We see a very clear divide, even in the aftermath of the Gulf oil spill,
right,
where, you know, by comparison, I think it's 210 million gallons or spilled over 87 days.
Right.
And still there's kind of this lame response that, British Petroleum is responsible, but what is the governmental response to ensure that our environment is going to be here for future generations? 70% of Americans still support offshore drilling in the aftermath of that.
Right, that is a big number. Jose, I wanted to ask you, in terms of the ecology of 2013, what was sort of one major ecological and environmental victory for our country?
Well, not much has happened yet in 2013.
Right. Or maybe just, maybe 2012 into 2013.
Well, I would have to say the EPA has been doing a pretty good job. The Environmental Protection Agency, they've been doing the best they can, and President Obama, his administration in general, as we were alluding to, has really done the best they can with the force. Because what we have to understand that what's being put on the environment it's not just the United States. We tend to be very nationalistic and think about it. It's a global impact. We have China, we have India, we have emerging world powers all over the world that are also adding something that's never been done before. So I mean, climate change, we all know that's kind of a controversial thing, and I would have to say climate change really was that one thing where it's really out there. It's a headline thing. It makes the front page of major newspapers where people understand that we are really changing the environment, and it's getting to the point where global warming is becoming an issue, where things like Hurricane Sandy that would never happen on like the East Coast do happen nowadays.
Right. Scott, I want to bring you into the mix. Do you have any thoughts on an environmental victory, 2012 into 2013, stuff like growth of urban farming, grow your own food movement? Are those seen as victories in your opinion?
No, I think there are two big victories in the last year or so. One is clearly the new fuel efficiency standards that the EPA has put in place, that the Obama administration has put in place, that will dramatically reduce the amount of gasoline that we use in our cars to fuel our fleets, and unthought of even 10 years ago, but a huge breakthrough, and partly because so much attention has been placed on climate change. Another victory that hasn't gotten much attention, but that has a huge impact ultimately on the loss of wetlands and prairies is the end of ethanol subsidies. We've been providing about $5 billion a year to subsidize the gasoline refiners to blend ethanol into gasoline. Because we have subsidies and mandates, farmers have plowed up about 23 million acres of prairie and wetlands just in the last 4 years. That's an area the size of Indiana, speaking of Indiana. So it's when you lose that much land, when you plow up that much prairie and wetland to grow primarily corn, you release an enormous amount of carbon to the atmosphere. You apply a lot more chemicals to the landscape that ultimately wind up in our drinking water or our bodies. And so ending ethanol subsidies and beginning to reverse some of the ethanol mandates that were put in place in 2005 and 2007 is another victory don't hear much about.
Right. And speaking of controversy, tell us a little bit about the federal farm bill controversy in the news. What's at stake with this bill, and what can we do about it?
Well, the Farm Bill is sort of the one big chance in the 113th Congress, the Congress we're in now, to really improve drinking water quality, to really reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to keep carbon in the soil instead of in the atmosphere. It's a great chance to reward farmers who are using fewer pesticides. Unfortunately, most of the money, the lion's share of the money, is going to subsidize the largest and most successful farm businesses. Some farm businesses just last year collected more than $1 million to go out and buy different kinds of insurance tools to help them manage their risks. No one's saying that the government shouldn't help farmers, but to provide a handful of literally the largest, most successful farms in the country, each more than $1 million to go out and buy insurance, and then provide another 10,000 of the largest, most successful farms more than $100,000 each to go out and buy different kinds of insurance tools. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. When we could be instead investing in programs that reward farmers when they take steps to reduce the amount of fertilizer that's washing off their fields, the amount of pesticides that's washing off their fields, that are taking steps to sequester more carbon in the soil.
Right. And in terms of what you're saying, I want to bring in the rest of the panel. Dee Dee, what do you think about this federal farm bill controversy? Do you agree with what Scott says?
I totally agree with him. And being from Indiana, I know I'm from a farm community, and I know the smaller farmers, and they basically get screwed. And the bigger ones, they're getting subsidies, and they shouldn't have them. And when they buy all the land, and we're not able to grow food on it anymore, which is very, very important, to go to ethanol, which was just a boondoggle. So he's absolutely right about that. And we have to be very mindful about farmers, but it's a lot of times it's the small farmers. And this Monsanto, remember the story we did a while back about how terrible they were about treating the farmers. I mean, and then they have to pay all this money because Monsanto has this big monopoly. I mean, we really have to look at the farm community and treat them well and realize that these people are important and it needs to be done correctly.
Jose, what do you think?
I think the water standards definitely is the big thing. I think moving forward with the expanding populations and the urban centers becoming very big, that is putting an effect on water. I mean, the largest usage of water we have globally is for farming, but that is made by the demand. We need to grow our food. We need to sustain ourselves. So the new standards that are being put in with the Farm Bill of maintaining fertilizer at certain levels and making sure it doesn't get into our water resources is a key thing, I think, that came out of this legislation.
And what do you think, Jose, on that note, I just wanted to switch the conversation a little bit to solutions. What can the average person do at home to make a difference on this Earth Day and beyond to do some of the things you were just talking about?
Well, I mean, I consider Earth Day the Earth's birthday. If we designated it.
Earth Day.
It's Earth's birthday. So I mean, all of us on this panel, anywhere on Earth, are not probably going to ever leave Earth, and we never will, no matter what.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, speak for yourself. We got the rocket outside, buddy.
Well, no matter what Professor Hawking says, Stephen Hawking was saying this week that we should go to another planet.
Wasn't there something in the news this week, though, about a couple planets have been discovered, which might be thriving just as we are, but I mean, you talk about the distances away, or just
right. I mean, it would take light years and generations of us to get there with our current technologies.
Right.
So this is our one planet. Most of us, at least on this panel, I think we're going to end up here. So I think we should consider taking care of it. So I would think sustainability and maintaining standards. Like we use, for example, in water, 400 gallons of water per day per person. You know, I mean, per household, I should say. So that's a tremendous amount. If we could reduce that by just a little bit.
How do we reduce it? I mean, what are
quick
practical
showers,
things we can do? Okay.
You know, quick showers, things along those lines could be done. You know, bottling water is a big issue. I mean, a lot of the water we get from our faucets, it's perfectly clean, it's perfectly drinkable.
Right.
The standards for water quality are higher for the water that comes out of your faucet and you flush down the toilet than it is for what you find inside a bottle of water. You know.
What do you think, Yohuru? What do you think we can do?
By the way, I completely agree that potable water should be a civil right. But for me, it's an old innovation that I think we're enforcing that's great, and that's environmental impact statements. When we look at this in terms of urban planning and the way that we're just thinking about the way we interact with the environment, that's critical. Just being aware, just saying, hey, we recognize that what we do, not just our carbon footprint, but our environmental impact, will change not just what it's like for humans, but the birds, the land itself, all those things are critical. So that for me, that old innovation is actually still very good.
Do you think, Dee Dee, do you think kids today care about the carbon footprint, or do they just care about their iPods and their iPad minis?
I think they care about it more than older folks because they, I think it's taught in schools now. I think it's a good thing, and Earth Day before didn't even exist. So, and I think the young people are probably more into having a Prius, or more into having a Toyota, or something that's not going to chug like 8 gallons of gas. However, that short shower thing, as a woman, have fun with that. you guys can take care of that. And also, as you're the tech guy, I think we are going to go to another planet. So that's good. But as far as Earth Day and younger people, yeah, I absolutely believe that they're thinking about it. It's taught in schools. It's good. I'm really big on the recycling because I was so shocked that that people don't recycle, and it's only 3 states where it's necessary and it's illegal. Yeah. So that should change.
You still have to beat the perception that environmentalists are tree-hugging, granola-eating, barefoot.
But that's how you start, though, doing something like that practical, where anyone would agree.
Got to go to Scott for a second because we have to wrap up. Scott, final thought, what we can do, and is Earth Day only for tree huggers?
Yeah, well, of course not. And all of us are doing things every day to try to address our impacts on the environment. One of the simple things people can do is make better decisions in the supermarket. When you decide whether or not to buy milk or buy a loaf of bread or something else, you can choose to buy products that are grown in ways that are more sustainable. You can buy organic, you can buy grass-fed. There are lots and lots of options that allow you to continue to enjoy food without paying more, but that also help pass on a healthy planet for future generations.
And we got to stop buying those individual bottles of water. I mean, I see these in the supermarket, these stacks and stacks and stacks of bottles, and ooh, it makes me cringe. But anyway, we're out of time. Thank you, Scott, out there in Skype land. We appreciate your insight, and thank you to our terrific panel, as always, for your fresh outlooks. Remember, if you have a fresh outlook, we want to hear about it. Let us know on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page. You can follow us at #FreshOutlook. I'm TWB or at TW Brill. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Fresh Outlook.